The day Belle Thornwick decided my family's 100-year old lake belonged to her pampered son was the day she tangled with the wrong rancher. 6 a.m., 3 police cruisers roaring up my drive, gravel blasting beneath their tires like gunfire. The sting of diesel fumes cutting through the steam of fresh coffee, still hot in my hand. And there she was, the HOA president, recording me from her spotless Range Rover, practically drooling while cops boxed me in on my porch. She'd accused me of trespassing on land my great-grandfather settled back in 1087. Meanwhile, her Instagram famous son had been pocketing $200 ahead from strangers fishing my private waters, the same lake where my grandmother's ashes rest. Then Mama Karen whipped out forged papers, claiming I was blocking public access. But Belle overlooked one deadly truth. I held the purse strings for every service her shiny little subdivision depended on. Drop a comment, have you ever burned to crush someone who tried to rob your family? And let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing my ranch kin spread across the nation. My name's Garrett Holloway, and this is how a suburban HOA queen tried to steal my family's soul, and discovered why you never cross a rancher who knows his rights. 400 acres of Montana heaven carved from wild country by my great-grandfather Augustus in 1887, that 12-acre spring, fed lake where he raised our first cabin. It's where 4 generations of Holloways have been born, raised, and laid to rest, morning coffee steam swirling into the mountain air. Leather saddle creaking beneath me, meadowlarks echoing across the fields. This isn't just dirt, it's legacy. When Grandma Eleanor passed 3 years back, we spread her ashes at dusk where she shelled peas, watching us kids swim. The water's soft lapping still carries her laughter on quiet nights. I'm 45, divorced, alone since my daughter Skylar left for college. Been working this ranch since I could grip the reins, planned to die here. Never thought some HOA princess would declare war on everything my bloodline built. 5 years ago, everything shifted. A developer bought the neighboring section, promised rustic charm while stuffing 200 McMansions onto tiny plots. Named it Whispering Pines Estates. Like a fool, I signed their emergency easement, thinking it was neighborly. That's when Belle Thornwick slithered into my life, like a rattlesnake dressed in designer clothes. Late 40s, blonde highlights costing more than my monthly hay bill. Driving a Range Rover that's never touched real mud. A realtor married to some bank VP, the kind who says agriculture, like it's a contagious virus. Her complaints began day 1. My cattle stank, ruining her dinner parties. My native grasses were unsightly from her kitchen window. Could I mow them flat, make things more professional? I laughed. Big mistake. Then her golden boy Tucker found my lake. A 22-year-old influencer with the ambition of roadkill, hauling friends out for content creation. And I use that phrase generously. Diesel trucks tearing down my access road at sunrise, beer bottles glittering in the cattails, thumping bass drowning out birdsong that's echoed here longer than his family's even been alive. Tolerance turned into trespass morphed into business, professional cameras, buzzing drones, Tucker charging $300 ahead for exclusive Montana wilderness. Posting like my family's lake was his birthright. The stink of entitlement outdid fresh manure. That's when Belle laid down her supposed ace. Evening knock, manila folder, that smug smile that makes your skin itch. Garrett, I've done some historical research. Her voice dripping fake concern. She spread copies across my table, pointing with manicured claws at county clerk stamps. Original homestead records granted recreation rights to township residents. We must honor tradition. I'd read enough contracts to spot a sloppy forgery. Her official papers cited Whispering Pines Township. Cute, except her subdivision didn't exist until 2019. My great-grandfather's deed beat it by 132 years. And I remembered my grandfather's wisdom. When someone hands you fake papers, Let them think you're buying it while you gather proof of their fraud. I'll need my lawyer to review these, I said, snapping photos of each page. Her smile twitched. Surely that's unnecessary. We're neighbors here. The coffee in my cup had gone cold. Outside, the herd settled for the night. Their laughter carried across ground my ancestors bled to claim. And there I sat, staring at a woman in my kitchen, surrounded by 4 generations of memories, trying to steal our most sacred place with counterfeit papers. But Belle had already made her first fatal mistake. She mistook kindness for weakness. She believed rural meant ignorant. She thought a country rancher couldn't fight back. She was about to learn something different. Montana ranchers don't just know the land, we know the law. And when someone comes for your heritage with forged documents, you don't just defend it, you dismantle them completely. Belle didn't just wave her fake papers like a sword. She turned the whole county system into a weapon. 2 weeks later, County Inspector Martinez knocked on my door, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Sorry, Garrett. Formal complaint about illegal water restrictions. Ladies called HQ 3 times, demanding immediate action. We walked the property line together, Martinez shaking his head. This is bull. Your deeds are airtight, boundaries solid, no violations." But he still had to write the report. She was stacking files, building the illusion of an ongoing dispute. Smart twisted, but smart. Then came the real gut punch. Belle staged a community safety meeting at her clubhouse. 15 neighbors, most fresh transplants who'd never set foot on working ranch land. Belle stood front and center with poster-sized aerial photos, pointing like she was briefing a war room. "This man's cattle are polluting our children's water," she declared, dripping with mock concern. "His escalating hostility toward families enjoying traditional recreation shows signs of mental instability. We moved here for quiet country living, not to be terrorized by some feudal rancher who thinks he owns the valley." The lies stung, but the financial gossip cut deeper. Whispers that inheritance taxes had gutted me, that the ranch was crumbling, that I'd cave to developers before year's end. Out here, questioning a man's ability to keep his ranch afloat is character assassination. Time to fight back. My grandfather always said the best weapon against liars is overwhelming documentation. So I hired the county's best surveyor, Martinez's own brother-in-law, to run GPS boundary mapping. $800 well spent when those satellite readings showed Belle's picture. Perfect fence creeping 3 feet into my land for 200 yards. Next came security, 8 high, def cameras with night vision and cloud backup, covering every foot of lake access. The clang of steel posts sinking into Montana hardpan with the auger felt like war drums before battle. But I also remembered something I'd read during my divorce, adverse possession laws, how 5 years of uninterrupted trespassing can create legal claims. Every day I allowed Tucker's circus to roll on, I risked losing my rights. The cameras would prove every violation, but more importantly, they'd show I was actively defending what was mine. Within days, they struck gold. Saturday morning, Tucker rolled in with a full production crew, lights, boom mics, catering truck. The works. They were filming an energy drink commercial set in authentic Montana wilderness. The audio was priceless. Tucker bragging to the director, "Yeah, this is my family's lake. Been coming here since I was a kid. Kid was born in Phoenix. Moved here 5 years back, but the deeper I dug through the footage, the colder my blood ran. Tucker wasn't just fibbing about ownership. He was running a full-blown business." His Instagram had exploded past 50,000 followers off that viral Hidden Paradise clip. Now droves of wannabe influencers were paying him $300 apiece for exclusive. Montana Lake access. Every weekend, cars jammed the county road. Strangers stomped through my pastures, scattering trash and spooking cattle. The reek of abandoned camping gear mixed with pine sap. Shattered beer bottles glittered like landmines in the grass where my herd grazed. My prize bull Augustus, named after my great-grandfather, stopped eating right. The stress of constant intrusion was hitting the entire herd. This wasn't weekend photography anymore. This was industrial, scale exploitation of sacred family ground. Then came the twist that pushed things over the edge. Tucker's latest Instagram reel showed him proudly building a rustic fishing dock at his family's traditional spot. Only problem: he built it square on my property, then charged clients extra for the so-called authentic experience. The time, lapse clip racked up 30 likes and climbing, but I had every frame of that dock construction on camera. Plus crystal, clear audio of Tucker bragging to his crew about profit margins. Commercial trespass, property damage, fraud, all documented with his own voice. That evening, whiskey in hand on the porch while the herd settled into the pasture, it hit me. Belle had made a fatal miscalculation. She believed a rancher couldn't wage suburban warfare. She assumed rural meant naive, that I'd fold under her fake papers and crocodile tears. But Montana ranchers don't just understand dirt and cattle. We understand law, politics, and how to turn documentation into destruction. Her son's entire social media empire stood on stolen ground, and stolen foundations crumble fastest when you control the demolition charges. Belle's next move proved she hadn't learned a damn thing from her son's blunder, captured in 4K on my cameras. 3 neighbors showed up at my door the next Tuesday. The Hendersons, the Patels, and a new couple I didn't recognize. They looked miserable, shifting like kids caught lying. Garrett were filing a joint nuisance complaint. Henderson muttered, refusing to meet my eyes. HOA says your cattle operation violates subdivision harmony standards. I'd known Henderson for 3 years. Solid man, he'd helped me chase strays off the county road more than once, but Belle had poisoned his ear somehow. I asked flatly, "What nuisance, Bob?" He cleared his throat, well the smell, the noise. Early morning cattle calls lowering our property values. Property values. There it was. Belle had convinced them that my ranch, standing more than a century before their subdivision, was somehow destroying their investment. She was staging a legal siege, layering complaints to make it look like the whole community was against me. But her real escalation hit 3 days later, and it was manipulative genius. I was checking fences when my phone buzzed. Sheriff's dispatch domestic disturbance, possible threats of violence. My stomach dropped. The address was mine. Deputy Collins pulled up fast, body cam on, eyes tense. "Garrett, got a report you threatened a neighbor. Lady claims you became aggressive over property boundaries. Implied physical violence." "Which lady?" I asked. "Belle Thornwick. Says you told her to stay off your land, or else," made threatening gestures. I nearly laughed, but Collins wasn't joking. In today's world, accusations stick even when they're smoke and mirrors. Then I remembered my attorney's advice during the divorce: stay calm with law enforcement. Don't get defensive, present evidence professionally. "Deputy, I've got cameras covering every inch of this property. When exactly did this supposed threat happen?" Collins checked his notes. "Yesterday, around 4 p.m., Eastern Fence Line. I pulled up the cloud feed on my phone. Let's roll it." And there it was, Belle walking toward my fence, me standing 15 feet away, explaining boundaries in a steady tone. Her screaming about rural terrorism and community threats. Me walking away, calm, no gestures, no aggression. Collins watched, shook his head. "Ma'am clearly struggles with the truth." He noted it down. Then came the kicker. "Garrett, she's filing for a restraining order. Says you've shown ongoing hostility towards subdivision residents. A restraining order, brilliant move. Even if thrown out, the filing alone paints me as dangerous, unstable, the aggressor. Her husband's law firm conflict of interest she never mentioned was likely guiding every step. But 2 could play the paperwork game. I'd been digging through Montana statutes since our first clash: homestead rights, water law, harassment codes. Turns out filing false police reports is a felony, 2 years max per count. Each bogus claim stacks into separate charges. And the harassment record I was building could fuel civil suits too. Legal fees, damages, reputation harm. My counterstrike came fast and precise. First, I filed my own harassment complaint, backed by 47 documented incidents spanning 6 months. Every trespass, every false accusation, every attempt to sabotage my business relationships timestamped, photographed, cataloged. Next, I retained Mackenzie and Associates, the top water rights attorneys in Montana, $5,000 upfront, but worth every penny. They confirmed what I already knew. My 1,887 homestead patent included absolute water rights under federal prior appropriation law. No HOA, county, or state agency could override them without due process and just compensation. Bell's next stunt involved insurance manipulation. Thursday morning, my liability carrier called. "Mr. Holloway, we received a claim. Your property constitutes an attractive nuisance. The HOA demands extra security patrols and a community access easement to your lake. They're threatening litigation unless you comply. Attractive nuisance legal jargon for property that lures people into danger, like a pool inviting kids to drown. Except my lake was clearly marked with no trespassing signs and cameras everywhere, hardly a public invitation. At first, the insurer sided with Bell. Their goal was avoiding lawsuits, not defending my rights. They hinted at rate hikes unless I resolved the HOA concerns. But what they didn't know, my cameras had captured gold. Tucker's latest Instagram bragged about raking in $47, zero in 3 months from exclusive lake access fees. He'd accidentally documented the commercial exploitation of my property, proving any attractive nuisance was purely a product of his illegal business. Sometimes the best defense is letting your enemies hang themselves with their own rope. Bell's desperation became obvious when she called Channel 7 News, spinning a sob story about a rich rancher harassing hardworking families. I was tightening fence posts when my daughter Skylar called from college, her voice tight with worry. "Dad, you're on the evening news. Some woman says you're threatening families and blocking public lake access. They're showing aerial footage of our property. The story aired that night. Ranch owner denies lake access to community children. Bell had staged the perfect photo op crying kids in swimsuits. My fence holding signs, 'Let us swim, stop rural bullying.' The reporter swallowed it whole, painting me as some corporate agriculture villain depriving innocent families of their traditional recreational rights. But Bell's panic really showed with the GoFundMe page, Save Public Lake Access Legal Defense Against Corporate Intimidation. She'd raised $12 in 2 days, claiming funds were needed to fight my army of lawyers and protect community rights. The comments section was brutal. Voices from across the country calling me a greedy bastard, threatening boycotts on Montana. Beef demanding the governor seize my land. Death threats poured in via email and messenger. 3 local businesses cut ties that week. The feed store, the veterinary clinic, even my longtime mechanic. Economic warfare meant to pressure me into surrender, but Bell's nastiest escalation was sabotage. Saturday morning, my water pump system failed catastrophically. 80-year-old equipment finally giving out, not quite. I discovered severed electrical lines and a smashed control panel hidden behind the pump house. $8 in repairs, and my cattle lost water during the hottest week of summer. The security cameras caught shadows near the pump house at 2 a.m. Friday night, hooded figures concealing their faces, smart, but not smart enough to erase tire tracks in the mud. A distinctive trigger matching Tucker's lifted pickup. Sheriff Collins investigated but found insufficient evidence for criminal charges. Funny how standards shift when politics gets involved. Bell's husband sat on county hospital board with Collins' wife. Coincidence, perhaps, but every action triggers a reaction, and I was learning more than just property law. My daughter Skylar, a journalism major with her mother's investigative instincts, started digging into Bell's history while I handled the ranch repairs. What she uncovered was explosive. Bell had been fired from her previous real estate job for falsifying property documents. Online client reviews accused her of scamming elderly sellers with forged paperwork and inflated fees. Even better, Bell's husband's bank was under federal audit for Questionable lending practices, the same bank financing the subdivision and holding most residents' mortgages. If it failed, Whispering Pines property values would tank overnight. Meanwhile, Tucker's Instagram empire was creating chaos on its own. His Free the Lake Party invite went viral too. 100 RSVPs for a peaceful protest to reclaim community water rights. Peaceful protest, in influencer speak, meant drunken invasion with professional filming gear. They arrived like locusts Saturday night. Cars lined the county road for half a mile. Strangers marched across my pastures carrying coolers, tents, and enough camera equipment to shoot a feature film. The scent of marijuana smoke mixed with barbecue charcoal as they set up along my lake like conquering armies. The party raged until 3 a.m. Fireworks exploded over the water where my grandmother's ashes rested. Electronic music drowned out the night sounds that had echoed unchanged for generations. Sunrise revealed devastation, trampled fence lines, scattered cattle, and a grass fire sparked by Roman candles, consuming 40 acres of prime pasture. Volunteer firefighters, deputies, and an ambulance responded for 3 alcohol poisoning cases. $15,000 in property damage, not counting ecological destruction to wetlands and nesting areas. Police arrested 3 partygoers for underage drinking, but Tucker and Bell had vanished. Convenient, while documenting fire damage the next morning, I noticed something shocking. The county emergency services bill listed my ranch, not the subdivision. Every police call, fire response. An ambulance run to Whispering Pines had been charged to my property. Pulling old records revealed the pattern. For 5 years, every emergency service deployed to harass me had been funded by my own taxes. Bell had been using my money to wage war, but that discovery led to something even bigger. In my grandfather's filing cabinet, buried beneath decades of receipts, I found a folder marked County Service District 1962. Inside were documents that would flip the battle entirely, proof of legal authority Bell never suspected. Papers that could dismantle her suburban empire with a single phone call. That manila folder contained the nuclear option I never knew I possessed. The documents were yellowed with age, stamped with official seals from 1962. Rural Service District formation. Cedar Ridge County. My hands trembled as I read through the legal jargon, because hidden inside was the key to everything. Back in the 60s, Montana established special districts to provide municipal services to scattered rural properties. My grandfather's ranch, the largest holding in the area, had been designated the anchor parcel for emergency services, road maintenance, and utility coordination across the region. But here's the kicker. The original agreement automatically made the ranch owner the legal service district administrator, with broad oversight powers that transferred with the property, whether anyone remembered them or not. I had been the district supervisor for 3 years since inheriting the ranch, and had no idea. The legal authority was staggering. As district administrator, I had the right to approve or deny all municipal service contracts for the entire area. Police patrols, fire department responses, EMS calls, even road maintenance, subdivision access, everything required my signature. More importantly, I had the legal right to audit all district expenditures and terminate contracts for cause with 30 days' notice. My attorney confirmed it Monday morning, practically vibrating with excitement. Garrett, this is legitimate. The 1962 Rural Service District Act is still in force. These powers were never revoked or transferred. You've been unknowingly subsidizing services that benefit the subdivision while they use those same services to harass you. The financial implications were staggering. The district was funded through special property tax assessments based on acreage. My ranch paid 60% of the total budget, roughly $200,000 a year, while the entire HOA collectively covered the remaining 40% for 5 years. I'd been funding my own persecution. Every police call Bell made to harass me, every emergency response to Tucker's illegal parties, every patrol car sent to intimidate me, paid for with my own tax dollars. But the real revelation hit when we dug into 20 years of district financial records. The spending patterns were criminal. Massive overcharges for security services provided by companies tied to Belle's husband's business associates. The HOA had been billing the district for private amenities, pool maintenance, landscaping, clubhouse utilities, even tennis court lighting. They had systematically looted public funds to subsidize their lifestyle, assuming this country rancher would never notice, or understand, the bureaucratic shell game. I'd found their Achilles heel, and it was pure greed. The technical details were beautiful in their simplicity. Montana's sunshine laws demanded full transparency for all service district operations. I could demand access to every contract, invoice, and payment authorization from the last decade, and what I found would be enough to destroy them. My authority allowed me to terminate contracts with 30 days written notice, audit every expenditure for compliance, and refer financial irregularities to state and federal prosecutors. I could literally cut off their access to police, fire, and emergency services while demanding restitution for years of embezzlement, but the psychological impact was even more potent. For months, I'd been on the defensive, reacting to Belle's attacks, documenting harassment, letting her control the narrative. Now I held the ultimate trump card, the legal power to dismantle her entire suburban kingdom, a power she never imagined. Sitting in my kitchen that evening, coffee long cold, as I reviewed the documents for the 10th time, I realized this wasn't just about property. This was justice for every rural landowner bullied by entitled suburban colonizers, every rancher, farmer, or longtime resident who'd watched newcomers arrive and demand immediate changes. Belle thought she was taking on an isolated country rancher with limited resources and legal knowledge. She had no idea she'd picked a war with someone who literally controlled the infrastructure that kept her perfect community running. The service district administrator had been asleep for 3 years. Time to wake up and exercise some long, overdue authority. Time to teach an HOA president that rural doesn't mean powerless. It means being connected to systems of law and governance that predate her subdivision by generations. Monday morning, I called an emergency meeting with my newly assembled war council. Attorney, accountant, and one very eager journalism, major daughter, who'd driven down from college for this. The Mackenzie and Associates conference room smelled of leather and old law books, the kind of place where fortunes are made and lost with a single pen stroke. My attorney, Sarah Mackenzie, spread the service district documents across the mahogany table like battle plans. Garrett, these powers are extraordinary. You can terminate every municipal service contract with 30 days' notice, but we need to be surgical. Follow procedures to the letter. Make it impossible for them to claim violations. My accountant friend Pete Morrison, who'd guided me through divorce and ranch inheritance, was already buried in financial records. Calculator clicking like machine gun fire. Jesus Christ, Garrett, look at these numbers. They've been billing the district $400 0 annually for enhanced security services. Actual market rate, maybe $80,000, but the real smoking gun was Tucker's own social media documenting his illegal income, $47,000 in 3 months from charging for lake access, plus another $32,000 from corporate sponsorships using my property as backdrop. Everything time-stamped, geolocated, and narrated by Tucker himself explaining profit margins. Skylar had her laptop open, monitoring social chatter and mapping Belle's network. "Dad, it gets better," she said. "I found connections between the overcharging security company and Belle's husband's bank. Same ownership group, same business address. They'd been running a kickback scheme through municipal contracts. The strategy emerged over strong coffee and Montana resolve. 3 phases, each designed to apply maximum pressure while staying firmly within the law. Phase 1, formal notification. I'd exercise my authority as district administrator to demand an immediate audit of all financial records, notify every party of pending contract reviews, and establish my legal standing before taking action. Phase 2, systematic service termination. Non-essential services would be cut first. Expensive security patrols, emergency, landscaping, special event coordination. Let them feel the financial squeeze while maintaining essential safety coverage. Phase 3, public confrontation at the scheduled HOA meeting, with full Media documentation of the corruption evidence, maximum embarrassment, maximum legal exposure, maximum community impact. Sarah explained the sunshine laws that would protect us. Every service. District meeting must be open to the public. All financial records accessible under the Freedom of Information Act. Montana's transparency rules are some of the strongest in the nation. They couldn't hide once I started demanding answers, but I also remembered civil forfeiture laws from my research. Property and assets used in committing crimes could be seized by authorities. If we could prove Tucker's truck transported trespassing equipment, or that Bell's house was bought with embezzled funds, we might recover damages far beyond simple restitution. Timing was critical. Tucker's biggest Instagram event was scheduled in 3 weeks. Some wilderness challenge sponsored by energy drink companies expecting 500 participants at his lake. Perfect opportunity to document massive commercial trespassing while proving the need for immediate action. Pete would complete a forensic audit of 10 years of service district spending, pinpointing every questionable transaction. Sarah would prepare civil lawsuits for fraud, defamation, and conversion, while filing criminal referrals with state and federal prosecutors. Schuyler would coordinate with the investigative journalist covering HOA abuse, timing media coverage for maximum impact. But we also needed allies. Montana politics runs on relationships, and Bell's husband's bank connections meant we needed influential support. Breakthrough came from an unexpected quarter. My neighbor Chuck Morrison, Pete's cousin, whose family had ranched here since the 1920s, mentioned that County Commissioner Janet Torres was seeking re-election, issues that resonated with rural voters. Environmental groups became natural allies. The Montana Wilderness Society had been monitoring social media damage to fragile ecosystems, documenting how influencer tourism was destroying delicate habitats. My lake commercialization fit their narrative perfectly. Even some subdivision residents were growing weary of Bell's drama. 3 families approached Chuck privately, complaining about emergency assessments and questioning HOA financial management. They were ready to support transparency and accountability, especially if it meant lowering their fees. The psychological preparation was just as important. This wasn't simply about winning. It was about setting precedent for rural property rights across Montana. Every rancher, farmer, and longtime resident facing similar pressure would be watching closely. As we wrapped up the meeting, Sarah handed me a thick folder of legal documents. "Garrett, you're about to become very famous. This case will be studied in law schools. Make sure you're ready for that level of scrutiny." Walking out to my truck, breathing in mountain air scented with pine and possibility, I realized the fundamental shift. For months, I'd been reacting, defending, documenting harassment while Bell controlled the narrative. Now I held the weapons. Time to go on offense. My opening move arrived via certified mail on Tuesday morning. A formal letter to the HOA board announcing my authority as Rural Service District Administrator and demanding an immediate financial audit of all municipal contracts. The letter was surgical. Effective immediately, all service district expenditures required administrator approval. Any unauthorized use of public funds for private subdivision amenities constituted embezzlement under Montana Criminal Code Section 456,316. They had 30 days to provide complete financial records, or face service termination proceedings. I copied county commissioners, the state attorney general, local media, and the FBI white-collar crime division. Overkill, perhaps, but I wanted everyone watching as the dominoes started to fall. Bell's panic response was immediate and spectacular. Within hours, she called an emergency HOA meeting for that evening. The resident email was pure hysteria. Urgent. Rancher threatens community safety. Emergency action required. She claimed I was making terrorist threats against essential services, endangering children and elderly residents through rural extremism. Her real desperation surfaced when she contacted the governor's office. According to my source in county administration, Martinez's wife worked there. Bell had attempted to file a domestic terrorism report, alleging I was using control over infrastructure to threaten the community's survival. The governor's staff apparently laughed Bell out of the building. Undeterred, she hired Pinnacle Crisis Management, a Seattle PR firm specializing in reputation damage control. Cost the HOA $37,000 for a 2-week engagement, paid from community funds without board approval, adding embezzlement to her growing list of violations. The smear campaign kicked off immediately. Fake social media accounts appeared across platforms, posting negative reviews of my ranch, claiming I mistreated animals, polluted waterways, and threatened neighbors. Anonymous tips flooded state agencies, the IRS, EPA, animal control, and building inspectors, all alleging violations requiring expensive investigations to disprove. Tucker escalated his own game, posting a tearful video claiming I'd threatened him with violence. This crazy rancher said he'd make me disappear if I didn't stop using the community lake. He sobbed, designer tears streaming down his face, complete fabrication. But the video went viral. Death threats started arriving by the dozen. People called me a psychopath, demanding authorities intervene before I snapped. The algorithm thrived on controversy, and Tucker fed it exactly what it craved. Meanwhile, I built my case systematically. My attorney filed preliminary injunctions against further harassment, supported by 47 documented false reports. Each fabricated complaint carried potential criminal charges under Montana law. False police reports punishable by up to 2 years in prison. The pattern we documented suggested an organized conspiracy. Pete's forensic audit uncovered criminal activity spanning years. The security company billing $400,000 annually was owned by Bell's brother-in-law, yet actual patrols logged less than 20% of billed hours. They'd been stealing $300,000 yearly from public funds. Landscaping, pool maintenance, and clubhouse utilities for the subdivision were all fraudulently charged to the service district. Even the tennis court lighting upgrade, disguised as emergency road illumination, creative accounting worthy of Bernie Madoff, but Bell's most desperate move was pure sabotage. Thursday night, someone cut fence lines in 3 locations, letting cattle wander onto county roads during rush hour traffic. The cuts were deliberately placed where cameras couldn't see. Maximum chaos, maximum danger. My phone started buzzing at 6:00 a.m. with frantic calls. 40 head of cattle scattered across Highway 93, causing traffic delays and near accidents. Sheriff's deputies, highway patrol, and emergency services scrambled to contain the situation. Emergency roundup costs hit $12,000 plus liability exposure for any accidents. Anonymous callers claimed I'd deliberately released dangerous animals in retaliation for the community opposing my so-called terrorist demands. The perfect narrative to paint me as mentally unstable. But my security upgrades left nothing to chance. Motion sensors along fence lines, infrared cameras covering every blind spot. We captured everything: Tucker's lifted pickup truck, 3 hooded figures, and the sabotage of fence posts engineered to fail under pressure. Even better, the audio recorded their conversation. Make it look like the crazy rancher lost his mind. One voice said, "Bell wants everyone thinking he's dangerous." Sheriff Collins finally had undeniable proof of criminal conspiracy. Tucker's friends were arrested within hours, charged with criminal mischief, reckless endangerment, and conspiracy to commit property damage. Tucker avoided arrest by claiming he wasn't present, but his truck's GPS told a different story. Bell's last desperate move, calling a town hall meeting to claim my ranch operations endangered the community. Demanding county intervention and even threatening eminent domain proceedings. She had no idea she was walking straight into a public unraveling. The criminal charges against Tucker's fence cutting crew sparked a community revolt Bell never anticipated. 3 subdivision kids facing felony property damage charges and up to 5 years in state prison forced their parents to confront the truth. Decent families who had blindly followed Bell realized their children had been enlisted in a criminal conspiracy by the HOA president they trusted. But Bell's corruption ran deeper than most imagined. She hired criminal defense attorney Marcus Webb, charging his $60,000 retainer directly to HOA funds without board approval. When residents questioned the spending at Thursday's emergency Meeting, she argued it was appropriate to defend the community from rural aggression. Backlash was swift and severe. Homeowners demanded financial transparency, scrutinizing years of inflated assessments and mysterious security upgrades. 3 board members resigned rather than face liability for Bell's unauthorized spending. Property values plunged 15% in 2 weeks as news of ongoing legal battles spread. Meanwhile, my documentation was exposing a criminal enterprise years in the making. Pete's forensic audit, it uncovered shell companies, kickback schemes, and systematic theft worthy of organized crime. The security firm billing $400,000 annually was owned by Bell's husband's business partners, providing services that existed almost entirely on paper. Nearly $2 million had been stolen over 5 years. Schuyler's investigative journalism network began paying dividends. Channel 7's follow-up story interviewed 3 families pressured to submit false complaints against me. Elderly residents revealed Bell had threatened foreclosure through her husband's bank if they refused to support her community safety initiatives. The reporter also uncovered Tucker's tax evasion. IRS records showed he earned over $200,000 from illegal lake access fees while reporting only $37,000. Federal charges for tax fraud and unreported commercial activity were now pending. Tucker's Instagram empire was collapsing under the weight of scrutiny. Sponsors dropped him one by one as allegations of trespassing and fraud surfaced. His follower count nosedived when people realized his family lake adventures were filmed on stolen property. Even his flashy energy drink sponsor canceled their Wilderness Challenge event, but Bell's most desperate gamble proved she had lost all sense of reality. She came to me privately on a Saturday evening, while I was out repairing fence damage from her own sabotage. The scent of sweat and dust hung in the air as she stumbled across my pasture in designer heels, completely out of place. "Garrett, we need to talk," she said, her voice unsteady. My body camera was rolling the entire time. "What's there to discuss, Belle?" I asked. "I can make this all go away," she blurted. $50, 0 cash if you drop the legal fight, and let Tucker use the lake, sometimes just personal use, no more business. A bribe. On video with audio, she had just handed me a federal felony conviction. "You're offering me stolen money you skimmed from my tax payments?" I asked. Her mask cracked instantly. Maybe Tucker pushed things too far with the business, but boys will be boys. And yes, maybe there were some accounting irregularities with the district funds, but nothing malicious, just misunderstandings. $2 million stolen was just a misunderstanding. I'll resign from the HOA board. She pleaded, voice rising with desperation. "We'll sell the house, move away, never bother you again. Just please, don't destroy our lives over some stupid lake. The place where 4 generations of my family were buried, where my grandmother's ashes rested, where my great-grandfather built the first homestead with his own hands." She still had no idea what she had tried to take from me, but her attempted bargain revealed something crucial. She knew the federal hammer was about to drop. Her husband's bank was staring down criminal charges for loan fraud and money laundering. The house they'd bought with stolen funds was already flagged for civil forfeiture. Their perfect suburban facade was crumbling, and my service termination notices. They were squeezing exactly as planned. Police patrols now cost the subdivision a fair $180 annually instead of the sweetheart $30 deal. Emergency services required prepayment or private coverage. Road maintenance became their burden at $85 per year. The emergency assessment notices hit mailboxes Monday morning. $3,200 per household to cover actual service costs. Most residents couldn't pay it. Overnight, the subdivision was staring down financial collapse. By Tuesday, the emergency HOA meeting was standing room only. Furious homeowners demanded answers about years of financial abuse. Some announced they were suing Bell personally to recover stolen funds. Others pushed to dissolve the HOA entirely rather than be bankrupted by her corruption. But the perfect battlefield was already scheduled: the county commissioner's public hearing on service district management, Thursday at 2 p.m. Evidence, testimony, full media access. The war's final chapter. That Thursday, Cedar Ridge's commission chamber was filled past fire code. Local TV crews, reporters, live stream cameras. The sleepy county hall had turned into a media circus. The air was thick with sweat, burnt coffee, and the musty scent of old law books. I sat at the front table beside Sarah Mackenzie, our evidence organized into color, coded binders thick enough to stop bullets. Across the aisle, Bell huddled with 3 high-priced attorneys from Billings who thought they were here for routine cleanup. The gallery looked like a wedding split down the middle. On the left, ranchers, longtime locals, and environmental advocates rallying behind property rights. On the right, subdivision families, many red, faced and angry at emergency assessments they could never afford. In the back, Schuyler streamed everything live, her lens capturing every glance and whisper for the world to see. Commissioner Janet Torres brought the room to silence with a single gavel strike. Her voice carried above the restless crowd. We're here to address allegations regarding rural service, district financial management, and administrative authority. Mr. Holloway, as the complainant, you have the floor. I rose slowly, feeling the weight of 4 generations pressing on my shoulders. Commissioners, what I'm about to present is the largest municipal fraud in Cedar Ridge County history. My first exhibit, Brittle Service District documents from 1962, proof of my legal authority as administrator. For 3 years, I unknowingly held budget oversight for every municipal service in this region. Powers misses. Thornwick exploited to siphon nearly $2 million in public funds. Bell's lead attorney jumped to his feet. Objection, this isn't a trial, counselor, Torres snapped. Mr. Holloway has the floor. I opened the financial analysis. Numbers spoke louder than rhetoric. My ranch alone funded 60% of the district's budget, roughly $200,000 annually. That money was systematically diverted to cover subdivision luxuries through fraudulent contracts. Exhibit after exhibit stacked like a tribunal. Security bills of $400,000 for services worth $80,000. Landscaping on private HOA grounds disguised as road maintenance. Pool chemicals and tennis court lighting passed off as public safety. Then came the bombshell, Tucker's own social media trail. Mrs. Thornwick's son had documented his crimes in real time, earning over $200,000 selling access to my private land while dodging federal taxes. Every post, every sponsorship, every staged wilderness event was built on theft of my family's heritage. The chamber's speakers carried their own words, Tucker bragging about profit margins to his crew, Bell coaching false statements for police reports. Infrared video of the fence, cutting conspiracy, their voices narrating the crime themselves. Commissioners. I said, my voice carrying across the silent room, they didn't just steal my land. They stole my family's legacy, then sold it back to strangers for Instagram likes. Then, the knockout punch. Bill's recorded bribe offer, $50,000 for my silence. Her own confession of accounting fraud echoing off the chamber walls. The desperation in her voice, the sound of her designer heels stumbling across my pasture, made the betrayal undeniable. Commissioner Torres leaned forward, face carved from stone. Mrs. Thornwick, do you wish to respond? Her attorney whispered furiously, but she shoved him away and rose. Her voice cracked like brittle glass. These are misunderstandings, accounting errors, maybe confusion about boundaries. We never intended, Mrs. Thornwick. Torres cut her off. We've just heard your bribe in your own words, and your admission of financial irregularities. This goes far beyond confusion. Then came the hammer, testimony from neighbors. Chuck Morrison detailed similar harassment at his ranch. One voice after another painted the same picture. The walls of Bell's suburban kingdom were closing in. 3 elderly subdivision residents testified, voices trembling, about foreclosure threats and relentless pressure. Then Dr. Rebecca Martinez, an environmental scientist, projected before and after photos of the lake. Gasps rippled through the chamber as pristine waters turned to sludge on the big screen, ecological devastation laid bare. But the most powerful testimony came from Margaret Henderson, the neighbor who had once signed false complaints against me. Tears streamed down her face. "We trusted her," Margaret whispered. "Belle said Garrett was dangerous. She told us our homes would lose value if we didn't act. She threatened foreclosure through her husband's bank if we refused. We were terrified." The commissioners didn't hesitate. Every motion passed unanimously. Terminate all HOA service contracts, launch state and federal investigations, and reaffirm my authority as district administrator. Sheriff Collins stepped forward, announcing criminal probes into embezzlement, conspiracy, tax evasion, and filing false reports. The FBI White Collar Crime Unit seized the financial trail. Tucker, facing federal tax fraud and commercial trespassing. Belle, facing cameras, angry neighbors, and the collapse of her empire. As reporters swarmed, Belle tried slipping out a side door, only to be cornered by furious subdivision residents demanding answers about the emergency fees she'd stolen. Her suburban kingdom collapsed in less than 2 hours of documented truth. By Friday morning, the headlines said it all. HOA president arrested in massive fraud scheme. Rural district corruption exposed 6 months later. Justice tasted like morning coffee on my porch. The sunrise painted the lake my family fought to protect. Belle was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison and ordered to pay $400,000 in restitution. Tucker got 5 years probation, community service, and a lifetime ban on monetizing social media. His fence-cutting crew spent 6 months in county jail, plus restitution for damages. The civil settlement hit even harder, $500,000 in damages, seizure of Tucker's truck and camera gear, and Belle's home sold into escrow. Her husband's bank collapsed under federal investigation, their fortune evaporating overnight, but the true victory wasn't money. It was justice. The new HOA leadership stood before a packed community meeting and issued a public apology. They signed the Holloway Accord, formal recognition of historic ranch rights, and permanent protection against HOA interference. The court sealed the lake forever. No commercial access, no sponsorships, no profiteering. Any violation would now trigger an automatic felony. Rural wasn't powerless. Rural was law, legacy, and unbreakable roots, and this time the land had won. The ecosystem began healing almost instantly. Waterfowl returned, the invasive weeds planted by Instagram tourists withered, and the natural balance migrate. Grandfather once safeguarded came back to life. With restitution funds, I founded the Rural Heritage Protection Fund, a legal lifeline for landowners facing HOA abuse. Within just 6 months, we defended 47 families across Montana, shielding their property rights from suburban encroachment. Donations poured in, swelling the fund past $2 million, as ranchers, farmers, and rural families nationwide rallied to the cause. My proudest achievement, a scholarship program for ranch kids. 12 students earned full college tuition in year 1, prioritizing majors like land management, environmental science, and agricultural law. Skylar, inspired by everything we'd endured, switched her major to investigative journalism, committing herself to uncovering rural injustice wherever it hid. But what came next exceeded anything I'd imagined. Montana's legislature passed the Rural Property Rights Protection Act, tightening oversight of service districts and demanding transparency in municipal contracts. HOA financial abuse was elevated to a felony offense with mandatory minimums. The law was nicknamed the Bell Bill, after our case. National property rights groups used our documentation as teaching material. It showed rural landowners how to research legal authority and push back against harassment. The story spread into legal textbooks, agricultural journals, and even documentary films on land rights in America. A year later, we hosted the first ever Rural Heritage Days Festival, drawing over 50 visitors to celebrate agriculture, conservation, and community cooperation. The event highlighted sustainable ranching, environmental stewardship, and the economic strength of working with longtime residents instead of fighting them. Even Tucker's former Instagram followers showed up not for clout, chasing content, but to learn about land conservation, wildlife protection, and the hard realities of preserving Montana's natural beauty. The lake itself became a living classroom, where university students studied restoration projects and sustainable recreation management. Businesses that had once boycotted me under Bell's pressure returned, contracts in hand, some offering apologies. The feed store manager confessed he'd been threatened with foreclosure through Bell's husband's bank. Economic terrorism, but we survived and thrived. Last weekend, I stood by the lake, our lake, watching my daughter teach environmental science students about watershed protection. Justice wasn't just served. It became heritage, law, and legacy. I thought about my great-grandfather Augustus, the man who carved out this land with nothing but grit and the legal deeds that proved his right to it. Over a century later, those same papers had shielded his legacy against suburban opportunists who believed money and political pull could bend justice. The lake rippled against the stones where my grandmother Elinor's ashes lay, carrying her spirit and wisdom into the future. Meadowlarks called across open pastures where cattle now grazed calmly, free from the chaos of Instagram tourists and commercial intrusion. My grandfather always said, "The land teaches patience, but it never forgets to deliver justice. Sometimes bullies pick fights they can't win." And when someone threatens your heritage, you don't just fight back. You make sure they can't do it to anyone else. Drop your own HOA nightmare in the comments. You might have more power in your corner than you realize. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because next week I'll reveal how a retired schoolteacher brought down an entire corrupt school board, armed with nothing more than a calculator and public records requests. The land endures, justice stands, and Montana ranchers never bow to bullies who mistake kindness for weakness. Another day, another HOA empire toppled. If this story made you shake your head in disbelief or fist, pump in victory, smash that like button, share your HOA story below, and subscribe so you don't miss the next battle in the BBS.